Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Adi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Adulterated Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Adulterated Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 26th day of November 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're in chapter 15, text number 9 at the top of page 602. 602. Okay. Shrotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam cha, Rasanam, Granam, Evacha, Adhishtaya, Manaschayam, Vishayan, Upasevate. Okay. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Can you chant tapas? Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Anyone else on this side? Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Cha. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Ladies? Oh, don't put that on the floor. Just keep it on this sheet. Yeah. So, you can put it under the book right there. That's perfect. You want to try to chant? Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Asha. Cha. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha, Rasanam Granam Evacha, Adhishtaya Manaschayam, Vishayan Upasevate. Do you want a book? We have my book, many more books. Just sit, we'll get you a book. Okay. All right, I'm going to read the word by word. Chad, are you with us?
Hare Krishna.
Go for it.
Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha,
Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha,
Rasanam Granam Evacha,
Rasanam Granam Evacha,
Adhishtaya Manaschayam,
Adhishtaya Manaschayam,
Vishyam Upasevate.
Vishayan Upasevate. Okay, I'm going to read the word by words. Tapas, get her to stand, okay? Shrotram, ears. Chakshu, eyes. Sparshanam, touch. Cha, also. Rasanam, tongue. Granam, smelling power. Eva, also. Cha, and. Adhishtaya, being situated in. Manaha, mind. Cha, also. Ayam, he. Vishayan, sense objects. Upasevate, enjoys. Translation. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of the many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So we need to understand this verse. We need to look at the previous verse, because they go together. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. And in this present verse we read, it's how we get another set of senses in the mind, and we have our other body. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I know I said that before, but never say it too many times. So, in this chapter, Krishna likens this world to an upside-down banyan tree. It's very interesting. The first verse talks about how this banyan tree has its roots up and its branches down. And then Prabhupada asks, well, where do we find such a tree in this world? On the bank of a very calm pool on which the other side is growing a banyan tree. And if you see the reflection during the daytime, you'll see everything is upside down. And the roots are up and the branches are down. So that's the first analogy, is that this world of ours that we're living in, the material world, is a reflection of the spiritual world. And Prabhupada coined this term perverted reflection or distorted reflection. But it is a reflection, which means that whatever we experience in this world has its real form in the spiritual world. Just like eating. You know, we have to eat, and we try to arrange it as a nice pleasure and so forth. And in Krishna consciousness, of course, we offer everything, and it's spiritual. But it's a process that every living entity is going through. Somehow or other, they're absorbing some nutrients from the outside and nourishing the body. The body needs nourishment. So what's going on in the spiritual world? Krishna's having his picnics out in the forest. And if we're fortunate, as the cowherd boys, we go out there and we also eat. And when Krishna comes home, Mother Yashoda cooks everything. And then the gopis are also, they have their families and they're cooking and it's going on, but they're thinking of Krishna. So eating is going on, but it's a different experience. It's a different experience in that it's all related to Krishna. Just like in a temple environment, we're meant to try to see everything in relation to Krishna. Like you walk in this room, and what do you see here that's not related to Krishna? Even the lights and the ceiling, well, it's all part of Krishna's temple. So that when his devotees can come in, they'll be protected from the elements and so forth. You can think of it that way. But everything, everything, of course you can see the pictures are there. Now, I'd like to point out that if you come into this room, which people do for the first time, on Sundays or something, and they don't know exactly what's going on, So it's all very kind of new and intriguing and exotic, whatever, And they look at the pictures, they have no idea what these pictures are, right? There's a man standing, and then there's some sitting, and he seems to be talking to him. And here you have some people dancing in the street. What is all that about? And here you have they're in the forest. Well, gee, that's an interesting painting, very nicely done. But you'd have no idea what it means. you see. Now a devotee sees those pictures, and Prabhupada saw these paintings as windows to the spiritual world, meaning that he could actually feel the experience of what's going on in those paintings. He was very anxious to get the painters, and this was one of the amazing things about the early movement in Krishna consciousness, that he was able to attract some really good painters, and they got better as they worked. The first painter, of course, was Jadharani. She joined at 26 Second Avenue, you know. And you see some of her early works, and it's a little bit crude, you know. But as time went on, she's dedicating everything, and amazing. And then Muralidhar came. For me, he was the best painter. I knew them all back in the day because they were all in Brooklyn Temple in the 70s, in the early 70s. The books were being printed there. The artists were given facility, you know. So what I mean is, when you have some knowledge, everything means so much more to you in a temple environment. Right? Like the books, the devotees, everything like that. So that's what we're getting here from reading the Bhagavad Gita. This is actually ultimately the ABCs of yoga, of bhakti yoga that Krishna is giving. But they're very important, they're essential to understand. And here Krishna is giving us a concentrated description of transmigration of the soul. The first lesson, the first truth that we have to accept, which we can't really understand by our reason so much, but I'll get into that in a minute, is that we're not the body, we're pure spirit. That we ourselves, as identity, are consciousness. The body is simply a very incredibly complicated machine, ultimately constructed by the intelligence of Krishna through agents of the material energy, to give the soul a vehicle by which you can interact with the environment. And the whole purpose of the human body, especially because of the higher intelligence, is to learn how we can act so that we don't have to again enter another material body. Krishna speaks of it in the 13th chapter. One of the elements of real knowledge is to be aware of the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. And they can all be very extreme. I mean, I think we know that. I used to work in a hospital. They're all in there. Birth, old age, disease, and death. You see it every day. And oftentimes, you know, it's very painful. The disease aspect, the imminent death, people are terrified because they have no idea what's going on. They think it's all going to end, you know, but it's not. We ourselves, and this is the first lesson, we are eternal, and the body is temporary. So obviously we're not the body, you see. Krishna says in the second chapter, there's a whole lesson there, 30 verses on the nature of the soul. But one of the most essential verses is this one that's quoted almost from the Upanishads. Prabhupada quotes a verse in the purport that's very similar from the Upanishads. That's why the Gita is sometimes called Gita Upanishad, because it's the summary of the essential spiritual teachings of the Upanishads. So this verse goes, Najayate mriyate va kadachin, nayam budva bhavita manabhuya, ajo nitya shasvato yam purano, nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there is never birth or death at any time. The soul doesn't come into being, is not coming into being, will not come into being in the future. In other words, we are as eternal as Krishna is. Eternal means never born, never dies, never destroyed, which is quite a revolution for us because everything around us is always changing. It doesn't take long to live in this world before someone you know, whether a relative or something, dies. And I remember when the first time I faced that, I forget, I was maybe 8, 9 years old, my grandmother died. Now, I knew my grandmother. We used to visit her once every couple of weeks. She was a very nice lady. And she used to, oh, not on the floor, people. Put it on the stand, please. Thank you. She had a really good mathematical mind, believe it or not. And she would always give my brother, who was a little older than me, these little mathematical puzzles, you know. That was one of the ways we interrelated. I was just looking on. I didn't really know. I was 4 or 5 years younger, so. But I remember that about her, you know. So I knew her. The point is I knew her, you know, and there was a bond there. The grandma, one of the grandmas. We had to another grandma. And then I heard from my mother or father, I forget who, that she died. She had stomach cancer or something. I said, oh, what a shock. You know, someone I knew is gone. I didn't know how to deal with it, you know. So But that's a universal principle on the material world. The living entities, we're coming into being, meaning that we're taking birth. And it's not always a human birth. We know that. That there's all these cats, dogs, and elephants, and insects, and everything. They're all souls as much as we are. You know, but their consciousness is much, much, much more rudimentary. You know, these trees out here. I remember when I first came to San Diego, and these tall, kind of faux coconut trees. They're not coconut trees because that would be too dangerous. The coconuts would come crashing down. But there they are, and they're just standing there like sentinels, you know. And you realize in the little Krishna consciousness, there's living entities in there. You know, but their kind is very rudimentary. You know, otherwise it would be impossible to live in there. But there's evolution. So the soul gradually comes back. You may lose the human form and go down. That's mentioned in the previous chapter. In the mode of gross ignorance, then you can lose the human form of life. But then you'll eventually come back up. There's no eternal damnation in Krishna consciousness. No, no, no. You can go, this is hellish, you know, worlds, but it's always temporary. You know, may last a long time, but it's temporary. And you always come back to the human form. So the key is to understand the unique value of the human form and to use it properly to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Now in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's some famous verses by Prahlad Maharaj. He's preaching to his father. His father is a big demon. You know, he's running the whole universe. Hiranyakashipu. The names say a lot. You know, Hiranyakashipu. All he's interested in is gold, you know, wealth and comfort. You know, Prabhupada said, yes, soft bedding and the bed companion, you know, like that. So that you get the idea. So, of course, he has a background. There's always a backstory because every living soul and embodied soul is. And he was a Jai or Vijay, one of the guards in guarding the gates of Vaikuntha, performing a great service. But they were cursed by the Kumaras because the Kumaras wanted to get into Vaikuntha, but they weren't devotees yet, really. They weren't allowed in. They were great transcendentalists, but the Kumaras were more attracted to Brahman than to the personal form. But at that point, they couldn't get in, and they became angry. The fact that they became angry at the devotees, these are guards, they're performing a service, you could see they're not with devotees. And they cursed them to come down to the material world. So there's a big commotion. Narayan comes to the gate, you know, on his lotus feet. And when the Kumars smell the fragrance of those tulsi manjaris, manjari means a blossom. You know, the tulsis have these blossoms which have a unique fragrance. They changed. They became devotees at that point. It's in the Bhagavatam, transformation, you know. And then they were so sorry, oh my God, we cursed these devotees, you know. But Narayan said, don't worry, it's my plan. Because Prabhupada explains that just as I said, as explained in the first verse here, this world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So in this world, sometimes you like to fight. I don't know if the girls would like it, but all the young guys like to wrestle with their boyfriends, you know, like this fight. So there's fighting propensity. So Krishna has the fighting propensity, but who's he going to fight with in Vaikuntha? So he has to come down. So some of his devotees come down, you know, and take the role of demons so Krishna can enjoy fighting. That's one of the reasons. So anyway, Krishna, Vishnu, he was encouraging the Kumaras, don't worry, you know, it was my plan, you know. But still they were sorry. But they underwent a transformation, became devotees then. So what happens when you come down? When you leave the spiritual world because we have minute independence. We have what Krishna has in minute degree. We're models, if you will. You know, we have this minute independence. That means that the love of God is the coin of the realm, if you will, in the spiritual world. That's what's going on there. But love means voluntarily giving. You see, it's not coerced. That's why, just an editorial note, because I've been editing this book so long. So Prabhupada would like to use the word, there's different rasas, different relationships with Krishna. You can be a servant, you can be a friend, especially in Goloka Vrindavan. You can even be a parent, like Mother Yashoda, we just celebrated, right, the Damodar month, you know. Wonderful rasa, so moving. Mother Yashoda, thinking of the Supreme Personality of God as a little boy. And he loves that. So he hides his divinity so that she won't, sometimes he shows it. You remember when he opens his mouth to show the universe? And she says, oh, what is this? I'm thinking that he's my little boy and he's Nanda's son, and now I'm seeing that the whole universe is there. But Krishna didn't like that, so he covered over with Yoga Maya so that she would again think of him as a little son, because he enjoys that, you see. So those rasas, we call them rasas or mellows or relationships, they're also reflected here, but in a perverted way, meaning that it never is perfection. There's pleasure there for some time, but then it ends. Then it ends. I remember, my mother was actually a very pious lady, although she wasn't a Krishna devotee. But she was very kind, and she lived a long time. She lived to be 96. And I would visit her. I would fly from Miami. At that time, believe it or not, they were cheap flights. I forget, it was ridiculous. $69 round trip from Miami to New York. Cheap, a lot cheaper than driving. So I would visit up there a couple of times a year, at least. That she was in Hempstead, in New York City, and I was down in Miami. So when I came, she was getting older, but she was still lively. She was taking care of herself, and she always wanted to feed me, just like she did in the old days, right? What can I feed you? So we know, I can't eat everything you handle. Like, make me a salad, or make me a baked potato with butter, like something that I would offer it, like that. So that was it. The rasa was still there, even in old age. She still saw me as her little son. So, but of course, eventually she passed away, and so that was broken. And she went on, But because I was a devotee, and she, that they benefit. They benefit because they're thinking, my father never reconciled. He was always asking me when he was ill for a while before he passed away. He said, "When are you coming out of that thing?" I've been a devotee for 25 years, because he never could understand the whole thing. He was an Orthodox communist, and he raised me that way. Luckily, I met the devotees. So the point is that these relationships are there, and it's a reflection of the spiritual world. So the idea in Krishna consciousness is to revive our original consciousness of relation to Krishna. And the point I was making, that Prabhupada, you have the Dasya Ras, the servant, right? There's so many servants, especially prominent in Vaikuntha. They're all in that mood. There's Vishnu, and here's the living entities, and they're in the mood of awe and reverence and service. But that's just one. And there's friendship and parenthood and conjugal love and so forth. So the Dasya Ras is the basic one. And that's probably sometimes called that servitude, And that's what we have in the books many times. But I looked up that word servitude, because he also would use servitorship. And servitude means slavery. It doesn't mean, voluntary service. And so we're going to change the servitude to servitorship, because it's not exactly the word that Prabhupada is looking for. You know what I mean? English was the second language. If I had to write something in Bengali, it would be all kinds of mistakes. I wouldn't need a big. So anyway, so back to the verse now. So what's going on here? So Krishna is describing the process of transmigration in these two verses, 8 and 9. So let's look at 8 now for a minute, the previous verse. So the living entity in the material world carries the different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Now the vehicle by which he carries that is what is called the subtle body. The subtle body we're all familiar with, but we may not call it that. And that's the inner self, the mind, the intelligence, and the ego, the sense of self, you see? So when the gross body dies, and you just think of it, it's a very complicated, amazing machine. And these senses allow us to interact with the material world and experience all these things, But and every time you see something or taste something, smell something, whatever, it makes a record in your mind. And if it's enjoyable, then you want to do it again. And so that plants the desire seed in your mind, you see. I remember when I was a kid, I was really into what they called chocolate kisses, I think. Little things of chocolate. So, I was, when Halloween or something, and someone would feel, oh, I got some chocolate kisses, So that was one thing I really, really was into. Then I eventually grew up. I think that wasn't so important to me. So that's what happens in your life, is that you have so many experiences that some are pleasurable, some are painful, and they make a record in your brain. And we know that if there's some trauma in childhood, it can last your whole life. This is why child abuse is such a horrible thing. I mean, any kind of abuses, but that's the nature of it. So what Krishna is describing here in 8 is that the living entity material carries the different conceptions of life from one body to another. So that subtle body that you created is the template upon which your next gross body happens. And Krishna is conscious of the whole thing. He's the super soul. He's aware of everything that's going on. And through his agents, the demigods, they're also arranging for your next body, either in this planet, another planet, this species, another species. It's a very complicated affair. But because we forget everything, then it's a great mystery. And unless you're exposed to this philosophy and trained in it, then this idea of transmigration just doesn't make any sense to you. Now, I remember in the 70s when I was working on Back to Godhead magazine, and it came out at that time. There were these, first of all, near-death experiences that we were hearing about, reading about. People almost die in a hospital. It happens all the time. And but they don't die. They have a heart attack, and people come in and they do the CPR, and there's so many things. And sometimes they revive the person, And a certain number of times, and certain doctors who would be on they wrote things about it, and they were starting to come out because we were always attuned to what's going on this idea of transmigration, and so near-death experiences where people they would actually leave their body for a certain time, and they were able to watch the operation go on, and they would see they're floating up near the ceiling. You've heard of this, and they're watching their own body being operated. They don't feel any pain, and amazingly, I remember there's this devotee named Sachinandan Swami, who's quite well known in our movement, and there's a nice site called dandavats.com. For those who don't know about this site, many nice articles and also lectures and things on there. So he was giving a seminar on there, and I got into it. And what he was doing was describing his own near-death experience that he had. He had an operation once on his leg or something, and some complication came, and suddenly he was unconscious, and the doctors ran in, and then he's not feeling any pain. And he's watching. He went through an experience like that, and he was telling the story. So this was very interesting because it kind of confirmed that the soul continues to live, even if the body may be clinically dead, but the soul can still be conscious. You see. And then came a book that we discovered called by Ian Stevenson. He was some kind of a psychology professor in a university somewhere in the South in the United States. And he was very interested in this idea of transmigration, and he did some research, and he found, especially in India, but not only in India, there is this phenomenon every so often of a child who remembers some of his previous life. You may have met someone like that. You go on YouTube, you'll see many of them. And so he went to India, and he started asking about these, and he found some, and he wrote down, and he checked. The child would say, he's growing up, and as soon as he can speak, he'll say something like, "You're not," in Hindi or Bengali, whatever it is, "You're not my real mother." I said, "What do you mean?" And he'll say, "Yes, I remember, my life back then." He would name names. He would be able to describe, because when you get a little older, 4, 5, 6, So he went and he did some investigation. He went to that village, which was maybe 30, 40 miles away, whatever. And he investigated, and sure enough, that this person was there, and they died, like that. And so he had a whole book full of instances like that. So this is empirical proof of transmigration. It doesn't make any sense, there's too many instances and too much accuracy, And no way in which that they faked it and went, and tried to create. No, it didn't like that. These are genuine instances. So, but this is just confirming what Krishna says, what we believe from the Bhagavad Gita. And it makes perfect sense. Krishna has this verse, maybe it's often the first verse that devotees memorize if they get into memorizing verses in the Gita. Dehinosmin nitade kaumaram yovanam jada tatade hantara prapti dhira tatta namuyati. It's a very wonderful verse because anyone can understand it and say, it's like a light bulb going, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And what he's saying is that just as in this body, the soul passes from Kaumara state. Now, Kaumara is a little boy, but it could be a little girl too, obviously. Boyhood to youth to old age. Similarly, the soul gets another body after death. The dhira, one who is sober-minded, he's not bewildered by such a change. Bewildered means he's not upset, because Arjuna was very upset that his grandfather Bhishma and his teacher Drona were going to be killed, and he might have to kill them. But Krishna was trying to get him off the bodily platform. No, nobody's dying. They'll be benefited because they're dying in my presence. Actually, I know all of the thousands and millions of soldiers were killed. Were all benefited because Krishna was there. Just him being there gives them a chance to go up and get liberation, you see. So we can all remember. Does anyone not remember anything from when they were 10 years old? I think you can reach back and you get a few highlights, right? We were definitely there, right? Our parents will tell us here. So that means also, from 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 1, we're having all these experiences. We forget them all, most of them, but they're there. There's no question we were conscious beings and growing. And then, in our teens, our 20s, 30s, however old you are, we're obviously conscious beings. So who can argue? The body is changing, but the soul is remaining the same. We're the same person, right? The same name, like whatever. So what changes? The body changes. Everything about the body changes. Day to day it's changing, Where the scientists now, replacing so many cells, in your brain and everywhere, like that. So, but the soul is the same. So doesn't it make sense? You're going to, we got middle age, and we get old age, and eventually the body is, like any machine, it becomes unworkable for one reason or another. All right, then that traumatic thing of leaving the body. But you don't die. As we just read, the living animate carries the different conceptions of life. That was 8. And 9 is, thus, taking another gross body, he attains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch. This is assuming you go into some kind of body that has those things. You could become a tree, these days. But anyway, generally, which are grouped about the mind, he thus enjoys or experiences a particular set of sense objects. Sometimes it's painful, so it's not always enjoyable. So this is the general principle of transmigration of the soul. And as soon as you understand that, it should change your whole calculation of what's important in life. Because in ordinary consciousness, parents know that their child has to get an education, right? And in a country like America, this whole public education, because they're training them so that people can live nicely. So, and then you learn, you got in grade school and do your homework, because, you want to get a good education and go to college so you have a good life. If you don't, you won't make any money, like that, So there's a whole reason to train children and for education. So the idea is that acting now in such a way, and it may be very painful, in other words, you have to sacrifice your immediate desires to enjoy, the senses, because you want to plan for the future, so you'll enjoy more later. Right? That's the idea. So this idea of planning for the future so that you'll have a best next life, that's there in every human life as well. Although we know it eventually has an end, at least in this body. So the same thing is there in Krishna consciousness. But the instructions that Prahlad gives to his father are pertinent at this point. Because his father was puzzled how, that the strength that Prahlad had, because he tried to kill him and he couldn't. All of the things that he did, he was protected by some force that Hiranyakashipu didn't understand. and that force was Krishna's protection. So he gave him. Well, he's like a poison tree in our forest. So we have to get rid of him because he refuses to give up this craziness about Hari and Krishna and Hare Krishna. So that's horrible, because Hari was his archenemy because he killed his brother, right, Hiranyaksha. So, they tried to boil him in oil and crush him under the elephant and pierce him, and every way they had to kill him. But Prahlad not only wasn't killed, he wasn't even harmed or disturbed. He was so fixed in meditating on Krishna, he was completely protected. This is what's... So Hiranyakashipu was scared, how did you become like this? Get this Krishna consciousness or whatever he called, So Prahlad gives him 3 verses, a very important instruction for us as well. So he says, Matirna Krishne paratak svatova mito adipadyete grihavathanam adanta gobhir vishatam tamisram punak punascharvita charvananam. So he says, basically he's telling his father, don't worry, you won't become Krishna conscious, father. Because someone who is matir na Krishna, the following people can't place their mind matir on Krishna. Matir na Krishna, padatak, either by their own efforts, or by meeting with others, or by any other way. Mito bipajyete grihavathanam. And what is it? Grihavrata. Grihavrata is kind of a metaphor. It means those who have taken a very, very strong vow to try to enjoy materialistic family life. Grihavathanam. And what do? The first thing is, where that's your only focus, adanta gobhir. The senses are out of control. You're always thinking what you can enjoy, how can you enhance this in material enjoyment. Vishatam tamisram. So you enter more and more into darkness of ignorance, And then this immortal line that a lot of devotees learn in one line. Punak punash charvata charvananam. Again and again chewing the chewed. Somebody, an ignorant, some say ignorant homeless person, is walking behind another one, and they're chewing some chewing gum, and he throws it down. If he's really desperate, maybe pick it up. You have to be pretty desperate to do that. But that's the idea: is that you're trying to enjoy what you already enjoyed in so many lives before, and which got you this point of a material body, and it's going to get you another material body if you do that. Because that's what happens. The senses are experiencing all these enjoyments, planting the desire seeds in your subtle body. And as Krishna says in the 8th chapter, a very important instruction, Yang vapi smadam bhavam chajachante kalevadam tam tame vaiti kontaya sadatal bhava bhavita. Yang, this is like a Sanskrit idiom, whatever you remember, whatever is the most prominent thoughts at that time of death, when the soul finally leaves the body, within the subtle body, leaves the gross body, that will determine your next life. Meaning that, like I said, the subtle body that you create with every day is the template for your next gross body. So here Prahlad is saying, if all that you've done, he's describing his father, is try to enjoy in different ways, the palace life and everything, then that's going to determine your next life. You're not going to get free of that. You're going to be, again, for suffering. So chewing the chewed. Chewing in this life what you already chewed in the last life, but you forgot, like that. So then he describes the nature of that. And this next verse is the one that Prabhupada almost always quote among these 3. Nate vidu svartakatim hi Vishnum. Nate vidu svartakatim hi Dorashyaye bahirartamanina. Andaya tandaya rupani yamana tepi shatantram urudamni baddha. Very important verse. Such persons who are completely materially engrossed, one way or another, classically in material household life, but it can be any other way. They don't know. They don't know that the goal of the actual life of every soul, but especially human beings which have a chance, is Vishnu, is Krishna consciousness. Return back home, back to Godhead, to our original life of bliss and knowledge. Nate vidu svartakatim. Svarta means your own ultimate valuable thing. Gati, the gold, is Vishnu. Durashya. So instead, they're trying to durarye bahir artamanina. The artas are all external, and it's probably hope against hope. you can never actually succeed in being happy, ultimately, in material life. Even if you have $130 billion, like you know who, or whoever is the richest guy, so-called richest guy in the world. But then, so many things you have, there's so many more things you're attached to, right? And how you got that money, all the people you had to step on and hurt, so many sins in your background. That karma is also part of your subtle body. That Krishna is keeping a track, So, but it's all taken away. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. This is another word from Krishna in the 10th chapter. He's saying, I am this, I am this, I am this. As death, I take everything away. So if you have nothing that you're attached to in this material world, and that's the pure devotee, then who cares? Take the material body's gone, but I'm going back home to Godhead. But if all you have is all these attachments, then you're coming back again, and you're going to suffer like anything. So punakmanascarvita charvanana, and then andaya tandaya upaniyamana, and the blind leading the blind. This is another important point. If you're not born into a family of devotees, then your parents, they may love you very much, but they're going to train you up to be a very nice karmi. Someone who's also attracted to all these different things like they were. So, the blind leading the blind, and the teachers and everyone, if everyone's ignorant of this, then naturally you're going to be a materialist, what we call a karmi, you see. So, where is there any way of escape? Krishna makes an intervention. He comes personally, speaks the Bhagavad Gita. But that's only once in a day of Brahma. We went through this already in this. Does anyone remember how often that is? How long is a day of Brahma, approximately? Any idea? It's really long. Go ahead.
More than 3 trillion years.
More than?
More than 3 trillion years.
No.
300 trillion.
You're thinking of his life. His lifetime is 311 trillion, 40 billion. He lives 100 years. So you divide that up into days, and you get each day is 640 million. Yeah, 640 million years. That's 24 hours. Once in each day of Brahma, 8,420,000,000 years, Krishna comes to earth. You see? So, 5,000 years ago. That's like a snap of a finger compared to 8,400,000,000,000, right? And he comes again as Lord Chaitanya, because we can't even practice the yoga that Krishna describes, and gives us the easiest method. Just chant. So it doesn't matter whatever your background is, It doesn't matter what your age. It doesn't matter. You see, just chant the holy name, Hare Krishna, and associate with devotees. And by a simple thing like that, you can actually achieve the final goal of life. So, but andaya tandaya, if you're simply, trained up and guided by those who are also blind, then you'll remain blind. So the key is that we've been blessed by the person who's got his eyes open, by Srila Prabhupada, who's completely awake and realized, and had the great mercy and determination to give this knowledge to the rest of the world. And you know the story. It's one. You read you can read the just Prabhupada. I think there's a condensation of the book. And Prabhupada's, his mercy, his compassion, his determination, his courage, everything. And we're following in that line. So we should take those blessings as much as possible. And it begins with reading, understanding, associated with devotees, and taking up this chanting, which is the easiest thing in the world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, any discussion on these points? Sorry, it's so rare that I have an actual audience. I mean, you've been here, it's been kind of rare. I have programs every night now. Monday night they're in a barber shop somewhere, and Friday they're, But thank you for coming. And those online, thank you for attending also. Yes, Prabhu.
What does a devotee do? What does a devotee do when parents who may not be within the practice are passing away? Like, what did you do when your mom was passing away? Are you allowed time to go visit? Are you there present?
Well, it's interesting. I wasn't there at the very moment when she passed, but I was there a couple of weeks before. And she was in a hospice situation in my brother's house. It wasn't in a place. This was in Ithaca, New York, in 2006, I think it was. She was 96. And so at that time, you know, she had some dementia and everything like that. But so I said, Mom, it's time for japa. And she said, okay. You know, she was. So she couldn't remember the whole mantra, you know. So I chanted, Hare Krishna. And she repeated with great pronunciation, Hare Krishna. Oh, great, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Hare. So we went like that for like 15 minutes. I have a recording of it. It's quite nice. And I don't even know if she knew what it meant at that point. She just knew that I was giving her this attention, and I was, you know, like that. So and then she passed like a week after that. You know, she was at my brother's house, and I came back here. He went to see his elder son, who was in the University of Chicago. He drove off, and he asked me to come up and take care of Mom while he was gone, because, you know, so I did that. So the best thing would have been, of course, if I was there when she actually passed. But even that, what she did, is very auspicious to be able to chant like that. We read about the potency of the holy name, and that's why I wanted to share a couple of verses about the holy name. There's one, remember that our final breath may come at any time. Originally it's Sanskrit, I'll just give it English. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. And then you find in the, of course, the Shikshastika is a classic. The first verse is practically the foundation of the whole movement. Cheto darpana marjanam, bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam, shreya kairava chandikavatadanam vidyavadhu jivanam, anandam buddhivardhanam, pratipadam purnamitasvadanam, sarvatmasnapadam padam vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. All glory to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. The chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge, which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds, wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, wherever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, that at every step one tastes the joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. So that's the summary of the whole class. In fact, the whole movement is summarized in that one. All right, see you all tomorrow. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. And now we need to, as usual, move with alacrity before the.
Anybody chanted for your mom when she was passing away?
No, my brother. You know, he wasn't a devotee. He tried chanting, but he said it didn't do anything for me. You know, so. Oh, not on the floor. Not on the floor. We tried it. The books are done different from Krishna. All right, we'll begin tomorrow from text 10. Is it? Yes, text 10. And maybe Mahima will be here. She usually is.